Hello, everybody. Thank you for returning to our YouTube channel. I'm Brian. This is my co-host here, Matthew Creedican, former Navy SEAL. And we both belong to an organization called Technology United for Ukraine. So if you're a scientist, engineer, or technologist, somebody who wants to help, please come join us. We bring innovative technologies to Ukrainian civilians and military. Link is in the description. All right, so let's get into this, Matthew. I wanted to talk with you about the 4.8 million men that have been signed up for the Ukrainian military. Um, how should they train them? How long should they train them? From a perspective of a Navy SEAL, this is one of your fortes is training forces. How should they go about this? And give us that mix and that length of time.
I mean, there's kind of what could you do with the magical amount of resources and what can you do with what you have? So we kind of live in that realm. Um, I think it's, all these people coming in, you know, there's there needs to be a priority on officer training, uh, all the way from the bottom to the top on, everything from strategy, uh, like L&O type positions, so you can get your combined arms effects. Uh, like, do they have that capability and capacity? I think the allies, there would be, relatively for the billions of dollars they're throwing at this fight, they should concentrate some of that, which would be a tiny amount relative to the effects uh, of getting a cadre together that can train that part of the fight. Uh, then you get to the NCO level. You need to find these guys who are experienced veterans and train them to lead these newer units coming out. But reality is they'll probably be backfilling a bunch of their uh, hollowed out units. Uh, so, they're going to get, who knows how many, a few weeks, and then they're going to likely get pushed into these units that are, undermanned, which I think there's quite a few. Because they're going to say they want bodies. As much as you can get people trained for war in that short period of time, the you know how to put in and create good defenses would be, at the very bottom of this, at the very basic of things is how to build defenses. And it should be a constant and never ending cycle for those guys on the front, and built into their DNA that they build and dig and expand their defenses every day. Uh, it gets easy sometimes. You get lackadaisical out there, just living in a position, and you're not necessarily actively fighting every day. That front might not be, but when the fight does come, you're gonna wish you dug those extra holes and put those extra uh, angles into your trench lines and your grenade sumps and extra firing ports, and did your fields of fire and put up your range cards. Um, so that would be the most basic of things, and worked on your camouflage because you know, it, I think you'll probably get, if you've listened to our things, you'll probably get tired of me saying that the drones, they're coming and they just keep coming. Um, so they're not going to stop. So being able to camouflage your position, have multiple positions to hide, and still fight from while the drones are overhead and moving around, will pay huge dividends um, to those basic forces. Um, you know, the ability to, utilize drones, understand how they're used, utilize jamming systems, and everything from how to, cover and concealment from those new systems would be kind of the next step. Uh, you probably have to select out your guys who have higher aptitude, because let's say a big chunk of those guys are your older generation. Probably not going to be the best guys on the sticks, but they could definitely help organize, the building out of your defensive uh, frameworks, of which you want a lot and many in multiple fallback positions. Um, so that would be
And
the
so
basic. Yeah.
would you say then younger people more for the tech stuff, like learning the jamming systems, learning how to operate drones. They would be probably more aptitude towards that. Where the older guys, which I've heard from the Ukrainians, tend to do better on the front lines and with, like you're saying, helping to develop the defenses.
Yeah, I think as a general statement, that's true. I mean, obviously you're going to get your exceptions, and there's going to be guys that are better at other things. As a general rule, that's what I've seen. Is it? Yeah.
Interesting. So, yeah, very interesting. Your perspective. Do they have something equivalent to our West Point, or is it a little bit more unorganized with their officer training?
Uh, you know, Actually, one of my colleagues was talking to a guy that just went through their training. Uh, I'm not super familiar with how their training goes in that regard. They have, I wouldn't necessarily call it equivalent, but it's attempting to be equivalent. And they obviously have a much compressed timeline, uh, and kind of the hurdle of, not necessarily a deep history of combined arms warfare. So, it takes a while to kind of build that out. And that's where, again, I would, push the allies to send over, non-combatant instructors in all levels of organization uh, and disposition of the battlefield. Like, if we, have any expectation of these guys being victorious or even holding the line, they need to uh, give them those kind of resources. And I think, these, that's been somewhat constrained, I would say, for various political reasons more than anything else. Uh,
Interesting. Yeah. So, probably how they use their funding is going to be critical on where they focus it with the training and what countries open up their doors to allow these officers to come in and train. Do they? And they probably have an NCO academy too. Like, I went through. We called back in my day BNOC, basic non-commissioned officer training, and then we had primary leadership development training when I was a sergeant. Do they have an equivalent to that?
I think in name they do, but I don't think it's really developed. It's still mostly that kind of
Rudimentary.
Soviet mentality where you really aren't anything unless you're an officer. It's like you're very kind of stairs, like super big stair steps. It's like enlisted, and then like the senior enlisted, like like couple guys, and like all the rest of that command chain is just like seen as flat. Um, so yeah, there's a ways to go on that piece.
Are they
Like I
different
mean,
in
my
their special? Oh, sorry.
my recommendation is because part of this is just a prestige thing, right? Because if you say, "Oh
Uh,
well, this guy's an NCO," nobody in well, in general, no one's gonna take that seriously. Like they're like, "Oh, NCO, you're not an officer. Yes, go pound sand." Um, so titles mean something here, and I don't think you're just gonna automatically create a culture where they value those guys' opinions and expertise, even if it's fairly high. So I would recommend fine, just make more officers then. Like ultimately, call them an officer, but it'll be an NCO. But now they
yeah,
have an officer title, so everyone look at them as an officer. And if that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. Just play word games, right?
semantics.
And yeah, there's some other units that did things like that.
What
So
about the special forces over there? Are they different? Do they tend to be more Western mentality with NCOs and officers and how they interact?
um, maybe to a slight degree, there's a whole lot of special forces, what they call special forces. Uh, I think, like a lot of special forces, what makes them more useful is that not that they necessarily start off with more skills or better. They just believe they're better. So they try to act that way to some degree. So it becomes a semi self fulfilling prophecy. Um, so yes and no. Uh, there's definitely like regular units that aren't special forces that just happen to have had maybe a few influential guys that started to get good track records, and that kind of mentality and culture spread within that unit to where they're just smacking stuff and they're a force to be reckoned with. And then there's quote unquote special forces units that could never really get out of the get up and functioning at a high level, and they're just kind of stuck, uh, at, a relatively ineffective level. So this kind of, a lot of it depends on who is in the unit and what opportunities they had, and whether that unit at some point got traded. There were some extremely good special forces units, uh, at least relative to the conflict at the beginning of the war, and they threw those guys time and time again into the breaches and to hold the lines, and they did it, and they lost a lot of guys doing it. So, um, it's a lesson I think they're starting to take on board now, um, where they're, starting to see more rotation back of those guys, and not to, just shove those guys into the breach every time. Because those are the guys who are really going to carry on and pass on the lessons of war to everybody else. And you have to keep them around and rotated into training. So back to the other question about training. Yeah, rotate your guys once they get a certain amount of experience and people see them as effective soldiers. They need to be the guys training. You can have your basic where you kick everybody's ass. You don't necessarily need that expertise there. But then when you train them to be soldiers, you need to at least inject that professionalism and combat experience and mentality, even if it's a short training course. So, I'd like to see from their side more intense, uh, like going, you know, 14-hour days straight of, like, say, building a drone, flying a drone, hooking up the explosives on the drone, doing test runs, hooking it up at nighttime and in the cold and in the rain, and various configurations and in patrol formations, and then doing like mock battles. I can just shove that training block into like a 2 to 3 week where it's like you're dead tired. You should be dead tired at the end of it, but you should be able to put a drone together and fly it literally blindfolded, except for once you finally get in the air. But it, it's that kind of level of competence that will make a huge difference on whether you're successful in missions, because every little detail matters, especially when it basically frees your brain up to think about the strategy and tactics rather than trying to worry about how you strap the damn thing on or how you rig up the right circuit so it doesn't accidentally blow yourself up.
So how long? So in the U.S., I mean, I don't. I was Army. We did 8 weeks of basic, probably the same for the Navy, and then you went on to advanced training, whatever your MOS was going to be, whatever your specialty was going to be. Um, what would be, given that they have to do it at more of an accelerated rate? What do you think their ideal time frame would be on average? I mean, some guys are going to need a lot longer training, but given how much time they don't have, how much time do you think would be ideal for the average soldier to be trained?
I mean, again, we're back to like reality. Ideal training would be a year,
Right.
right? Train a guy for an entire year. You look at like a pipeline for any of these, SF type uh, MOS specialties or SEALs. Like at the end of the day, you're basically in it for a year, training pretty intensely, and you get a pretty good soldier at the end of that for a year time frame. But the war could be over in a year, so you don't have anywhere close to that time. Uh, and I mean, look, I would recommend that you don't just sign up as you sign up almost the damn entire population. If I was going to run it, I would everyone that's 16 to 60 would be in the system, and you'd have like say 3 tiers, and the first tier would be the guys getting ready to go to the front line. The second tier would be people getting ready to go to the front line, whether they're reading. You're having formations every other day, and guys are learning to work out, and they're going over basic skills of how to build trenches and blindages, and the extreme basics, to building drones. And then the third group would be doing, and if they're like the less combat oriented group, like whether you're going out and collecting scrap metal, or helping assemble weapon systems or build defenses behind the lines, like around the power stations. Like, but everybody should be a whole society fight. And that signals to your allies that you're ready to win. That signals to your enemy that there's no way they'll beat you. All they'll do is destroy. They'll just do scorched earth and just kill everything and everybody's the only way they're going to get that land. And that as an attacker, knowing that, it's going to sap their morale even more. This is like basically there's no way you're going to take this land without extreme loss. And I think that would invigorate the entire populace, because who wants to go out to the front when they see somebody else just going to the donut shop? It's you want the whole society impact.
That is really great insight. So, well, everybody, appreciate you coming. Remember, we're Technology United for Ukraine. Link is in the description, and we look forward to seeing you on our next video.